Well, it's pretty awesome to have you here, Doomsee. Welcome into the video, and congrats on making it into the RLCS. Back again, been some time to see you in the scene again since about, I think, 2019, I think, was the last time, back in
Yes.
Europe we saw you there specifically. So tell everyone who might not be familiar with you and where you've all been, who is Doomsee?
Right, we're getting philosophical straight off the bat. Who is Doomsday? That's a great question. So I wake up every morning, I look in the mirror, and I go, "Who are you?" That's what I do. Um, okay, so oh god, all right, that's the origin story. So I to start with, I played Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Power Battle Cars before Rocket League came out for like 6 years or so, and then Rocket League came out. It was 2015. There were about 10 players who could aerial in the world, myself included. And yeah, if you could aerial, you basically were the best in the world, and therefore, you're winning all the tournaments. Essentially, but everyone who played battle cards was the top of their game, and leading up into the first season of RLCS in 2016, where I actually was starting to mix up a bit with new players. That's when I first entered RLCS with Supersonic Avengers alongside Snasky and Lamp. Played in season 1 and 2. And then since then, I've never been back into RLCS until now. So that was 2016. So 5 years ago was the last time I was in RLCS. And I basically just spent the year 2017, 18, and 19 essentially just trying to stay in the pro scene, get back into it, playing in various tournaments like DreamHack's Gfinity Elite Series, things like that. And then, eventually retired, quote unquote, in 2019, where I was basically like, all right, I've had fun. Let's just move into editing, which was always my other passion in life. And so now I edit for Torrent. I do a lot of editing for Silence as well. And that's basically my full-time job at the moment. But then RCS was announced that it was going to be in Asia and Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa, and basically the entire world was now in RLCS. About, was it 2 months ago they announced it or something? And so then I went, all right, this is fun. Let's play a bit of Rocket League and see. And I think the reason why I got into it is because the IWO, the Intel World Open in Japan, I played in that for fun because it's just a bit of fun. And I fully expected to just get top 64 maybe, and then just lose. And I played with Fisher Kid and Goon, basically 2 champ ones, I think they were. And we got top 12, and I was like, huh, that shouldn't happen. How did we get top 12? That's a bit wild. So then I was like, okay, when RCS was announced, I was like, actually, if I can try to find some good like teammates that are like the same rank as me, I think we might actually have a quite good shot. So I was like, okay, you know what, screw it, I'm going to do it. And with some very lovely encouragement from my girlfriend who pushed me, I was on the edge, like, should I? And then she was like, no, go for it, this would be amazing. So I went for it, and I just basically made a tweet, who wants to play RLCS with me? And then I basically it was basically Laz and Sig who came to message me, and we've played for a bit together. But then we also tried out Furlash, who came in. And then in the end, we decided that Sig, Furlash, and myself would be the starter, and Laz would be the substitute. And we just did quite well. And then I joined the RL 6-mans in Asia, and then I was just put straight in rank X for some reason. But actually, I feel like it's a good place for me to be. So I was just like, okay. And so now we're in RCS in the top 8, basically, because we're in the upper bracket. So I was like, okay, wow, this is something. So somehow I've just managed to make myself back in RCS, and I guess I'm technically now unretired. I don't know. I just wanted to play RCS, so I just got some teammates, and then here I am.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack about that. It's been quite a journey for you. You had 5 years trying to get back into the RLCS, playing in Gfinity, a bunch of different teams you're a part of too. I mean, hashtag United for one when you're in that Gfinity Elite Series itself. Doing pretty decent there. Couple of different trials when I feel like everyone on Twitter in Europe, whenever they saw you on a team trying to qualify, they'd be following you, and then they're just like, oh, I'm so unfortunate at that point in time. But now you're back into the RLCS itself. But before we even get to that, I mean, want to touch in on the editing portion of things for you too, because that's been a huge thing for you, and you've been creating content for quite some time now. Like, how did you originally get into becoming an editor?
Well, let's go back to the next origin story, like the two prongs of my life: Rocket League and video editing. So like honestly, I think it was back in when I was about 7 years old, and I was like using my PC, and Macromedia Flash came out, and it was like, the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You can like draw things and animate them, and obviously my 7-year-old brain was like, so I was drawing stickmen and making animations and stuff. And then basically since then, I've been just making animations, and like growing up, I was making animations and making short films and visual effects and things like that. And I'd just be doing that, all the way up through my teenage years until honestly like 18, 19. Went to university, studied visual effects and animation there. And then that's when I went. Yeah, it was around about the middle of uni when Rocket League came out, and then that's when I sort of like transitioned into Rocket League because I was like, oh, this opportunity has arrived. So I've always had a passion for video editing, and so basically that was always going to be my job, my plan before I first started going into Rocket League for a bit. And then so obviously the natural conclusion was when I stopped playing Rocket League, just to pursue my video editing a bit. I've always done video editing throughout playing Rocket League. But it was just very much like a side gig. I didn't really put like all my hours into it, and I didn't pursue it full time. But then obviously since in 2019, when I just decided to stop trying to play Rocket League competitively, I just put all my energy into video editing, and that's when around that time that's when I ended up working with Torrent Alpine at the time and became their lead video editor and making videos for them. Obviously, I've done a lot of stuff on YouTube in the past, off and on. I have a mixed bag with YouTube, honestly. I think it's because it's just like, oh, here's another. Like I know everyone loves the 1v1 series, right? And it has its moments. I'll give it that. But it's just like, oh look, episode 23. I'm making the same video again. It's just me doing a 1v1, and it's like when the reason why I like video editing was when I was like creating stories. So when I was making short films and that was what like entertained me, making like films, fiction stuff, right? And whereas when it was just like, oh, here's another Rocket League video, where it's like, oh, here's how to do a flip reset. It was just a bit like, which is why I always got into YouTube, stopped for a bit, got back into it, and stopped for a bit. Because I was like trying to get my editing fixed, but then that wasn't quite what I was trying to do. But then like honestly, making montages is probably the funnest thing I find with video editing. So I could just have done that with my basically I should just go through RLCS replays and just make montages for YouTube. That's probably what I should do. But at the moment, I'm just like making videos for Cynix and Torrent, which is my go-to. So that's my basically second. I don't know what I find more enjoyable, but they're my two passions in life: video editing and playing video games, especially Rocket League. So,
I mean, that is the answer for who Doomsee is: Rocket League and editing, because that's what we've seen you've been doing for such a long time here. But now you're able to do more Rocket League stuff, and talking about your quote unquote retirement that you mentioned before. Any particular reason? I mean, it might be obvious to some people that you kind of stopped for a couple of years until you actually came back for the IWO.
Actually, I'll tell you what, the decision to retire was actually a very difficult decision for me. It seems obvious because, like, by the time I retired, people would like, I mean, who was Doomsee again? Like, I haven't seen him since 2016. I thought he was. I didn't know the amount of times that people were like, "Oh, is Doomsee like still playing or whatever?" I didn't even realize. And obviously, just goes to show like how good other people have gotten, how far I'd fallen, relatively speaking. But obviously, like I guess, like they always say, never quit, never give up, never give up on your dreams, kind of thing. But honestly, I think one of like the strongest things to do is to just say like, oh, I quit, like I can't do this anymore. This is like, to quit something like that was really difficult. Even if like from an outside perspective, it just looks like, well, you're not doing anything. Like you're not in RLCS. What is there to quit? But it's more like quitting the dedication to try and get there, like quitting the effort, so to speak. So obviously, if I was still in Europe, I would not be playing in RLCS right now. I would not be like trying to play because I'd just still be doing my video editing. But obviously, since moving to Japan, and then they announced RLCS was in Asia, and then knowing that I'd gone into the IWO, I mean, like if there was like an IWO for Europe, maybe I would have gone, maybe I would have tried. Well, obviously there was, but like if I was in Europe at the time, sorry, would I have entered? Maybe, I don't know, probably not. But then like in Japan, I was like, well, let's do it, because I knew that obviously the region wasn't as good, but I didn't really realize like how good I could be in the region. So yeah, so basically just the fact that we got top 12, I was like, that's ridiculous. Like champ 1s and like a grand champ 3 should not be getting in the top 12 in Japan. So I was, yeah, so you know, that was a real spark for just basically trying to get back into the RLCS. And I was like, I honestly, going into this, I still felt like, oh, I just want to have a bit of fun and just play. But then we played, and then we were doing really well against like the top 4 teams in Asia, and I was like, okay, well now this has just gotten serious now, isn't it? So now I've just taken a whole new like approach to it. Now I'm just going like, now I'm scrimming and practicing and like just like grinding really hard. It's like, because it actually seems quite feasible for us to be a top 4 team in Asia, which is quite ridiculous. But I'm like, I'm all for it. If that's gonna happen, then you know what, this is my time to shine. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's try to win Asia. It'd be quite funny.
Talking about the new region, you know, APAC North or Asia and Pacific North. How does the region look to you as a whole? I would say, I mean, since you said you're realistically like close to that top 4 and seeing the other players that you might have been scrimming with and doing pretty decent in the IWO, and you kind of had like, you know, a fun team you were playing with, like what does the competition look like out there?
It has a lot of growth to do, but like any other like EU and NA, you know, it had to start from somewhere, right? I like to look, you know, you look at OC and South America, because obviously they've had their RLCS for a while, so they've had sort of room to grow. It'll be interesting. Will be interesting to see how they compete with EU and NA in at the majors, because like, you know, Chiefs were the only team who could really like actually compete, and even then they went up a bit, and then it kind of went, you know, down, relatively speaking. But obviously it's been about 2 years now since we've had a LAN, so that's a lot of time for them to sort of grow and develop. So I think that'll be a good indicator where if they actually do sort of, if they can compete with Europe and North America, and not just get trounced like right at the bottom, then that's quite a good sign. That's probably where H is going to be. But I think a really good sign is like it's the depth. Like top 8 in Europe and North America are all just like trading matches with each other. So, I mean, you know, North America's the top 4, right? But it's not like the top 4 are just absolutely decimating the bottom, you know, the next 4 teams. It's like it's a lot closer, and then even then it's like the next 4, and then like the top 16 overall is just a lot better. Whereas in other regions, like not so much in OCE now, but you know, South America had this with True Neutral before they moved, and like Asia basically has this now. Like I don't know if APAC South was an absolute bloodbath. Like 3 rats who are out there now. I've actually already forgotten the name. You know, they absolutely destroyed APAC South, and that's an indicator of a region that needs to grow. Is when there's just one team who just destroys everyone, and that was sort of how it was at the beginning of EU and NA, wasn't it? You know, EU, there's Arbor Power Cosmic, and then there was Flipside Tactics. But that very quickly became like, you know, Flipside Tactics and We Don't Girls, and then Mock It, and then actually it was quite, it just quickly expanded to like a top 4 and then like a top 8. So I think it's just the depth just like needs to come closer together.
Well, hopefully the international competition is going to help with that. As you're mentioning, OCE, once they were able to go to those LAN events, they were actually able to kind of compete and bring that experience in the scrims that they learned, the mechanics and everything else, you know, with the rotations, and actually like not just throwing everything at the net itself and having some defense and all that. I remember those first games we saw with the Chiefs. Oh, those are some tough ones for OCE specifically, but you know, gotta take time, and hopefully, you know, those top teams will bring that experience to the other players that are on the field itself in each region. But you know, focusing in on your team specifically, you mentioned after IWO, you just kind of put a tweet out and figured out what team members you're gonna pick up from there. Did you have like many tryouts? Did you have like other ideas for who you would play with, or did it all just kind of fall into place?
Yeah, we had basically no tryouts, to be honest. I literally got 2 responses, which was Laz and Sig, and so I was like, well, we've got a team. Because obviously, like, firstly, I'm in a region which doesn't have that many players. Like, I was looking for players who are the same rank as me, and to find that, I was basically looking for 2 English-speaking players who don't mind coming in English, who are also the same rank as me in a region that basically has no one. And that was quite an ordeal. Or it would have been an ordeal, but luckily I just got 2 responses straight away, and then that was it. Like, so, because a lot of, like, you know, in 6-mans, a lot of the teams and players are in South. I think South is like a bit of a bigger pool of like that mid range, whereas North is like top, and then there's just like a massive gap, and then bottom, right? So, you know, because obviously I don't really speak much. I mean, I could learn the comms in Japanese. Like in my Japanese lessons, I have not been learning Rocket League lingo. Let's just put it that way. But I could you know, I could have learned a bit of that, and I would have been down for that. But my, you know, I thought my focus, let's just try to find some English speaking teammates to make comms and communication easier for us. And yes, that's when I found, you know, 3 Americans came my way and were like, hey, let's make a team. So it was, we tried out, but we basically already decided, like, let's all team together before we even tried out, because there just really isn't much choice. So whatever that says about me, I don't know, but you know, they teamed with me because we had no other choice. Basically, everyone else was either in APAC South or was basically teaming with other Japanese players, because obviously they want to common Japanese, which makes sense.
Talking about the season itself, the main events coming up this upcoming weekend and all that for the top 16 teams, what are your expectations and kind of the expectations for the other teams that are out there? Who are you seeing the, you know, top 8 that are going to be making it into the actual playoffs itself?
What's probably going to happen is the top 8 that we saw in the closed qualifier is going to be the top 8 in the main event. But basically, Tokyo Verde is like the final boss of APAC North, if you will. They're like obviously the favorites. They're the top dogs, and yeah, they are at the moment. They are the best team in APAC North. And then it gets a bit interesting, because I think after that it's like Detonator and Ganders, and I want to say our team, because I feel like the top 4 is Tokyo Verde, that little gap, Detonators, Ganders, and us, like sort of equal footing, I would say. So I feel like we're the top 4. And then after that, I think there might be a little bit of a dip. It's hard to say, because we're basing this entirely on scrims, which is a whole different ball game than the tournament. So we'll see how teams perform. As we saw in APAC South, some teams kind of crumbled, and some teams just went off the rails, and that always happens every single like RLCS. So we've obviously just basically scrimmed, because we want to scrim the best teams we can, right? So yeah, we'll be scrimming Detonators, Ganders, and Tokyo Verde mostly. So I can't really say too much about where the other teams are, but I'm pretty confident that it's basically going to be like Cvent. Some of these names I just cannot pronounce, but like Cvent, Nimt 55, Zephyrs, and Blast. Basically, they're the remaining teams that were in the top 8, and that's probably what it's going to be.
Just based on that playing field, who you think is actually going to be making it to the major specifically?
So maybe the first major, you're thinking Tokyo Verde, but honestly, as the months go on, if we can work on our game, and hey, like even Detonators and Ganders, you know, if they improve as well, I think it might be a lot closer. Because often the top team, it's harder for them to get better because there's no team above them pushing them. But for us, obviously, we can work towards getting to Tokyo Verde, and then, you know, and above them. So you know, I think as the months go on, I feel like we can definitely get a lot better. And the ultimate goal for us is to make the major, and I definitely think that's possible.
Makes sense. Well, final question I have for you too. I mean, any final thoughts you have about like the new regions joining the RLCS itself, and kind of the upcoming season, and how you see the regions evolving over time with that too?
I'm just so glad that RLCS is now actually worldwide. I know technically not every country can participate, but essentially every continent is now involved, and it feels worldwide now. It always felt like there was a bit of a gap with even if they're not actually as good, even if they're not quite as good, to have all the other regions join in to EU, NA, SAM, and OCE. It now just feels like worldwide. Now I feel like we've got it right. It will take a long time for the growth to happen, I think, just based on what has happened in SAM and OCE. Because even now, like, I don't feel like they're at their level, but maybe they. I don't know. We'll see what the growth is, right? Because I'm sort of basing this based on 2 years ago, and obviously that's a long time ago in Rocket League. So, I'm just so excited that when the major comes, we're gonna have all these different regions coming together, and I really hope, just because it'd be great to have more variety from the continents rather than just EU and NA all the time. It'd be great if South America and OC could actually put up a fight in the majors, and then give the other regions time to catch up.
It's been great to have you on, Doomsee. I mean, so much insight into your journey, the two prongs of your life, and the origins there as well. The great philosophical answer and all that too. Any like shout outs or content or anything you want to say before we send you off for the day?
I'll just say thank you to everyone who is supporting Hilltop Picnic and our journey. Big shout out to Stumpy, who put on a hilarious live tweet of our qualification match because we weren't getting streamed. That was hilarious. But yeah, just thanks to all the fans and everyone watching and cheering us on, and we'll do our best in this week's regional.
Awesome. And where can people find you on socials?
You can find me on @Doomsee on Twitter with 3 E's. Sorry about this, 3 E's because the 2 E's was taken. Yeah, and then YouTube is Doomsee, 2 E's. Instagram is 3 E's. Basically, try 2 E's, and if that doesn't work, try 3 E's, because everywhere, basically, like Twitter, Instagram, YouTube is basically just Doomsee.
Awesome. Well, it's been great to have you, man, and good luck in the main event and for the regionals themselves, and hopefully you'll be able to make it to that major.
Thank you very much. This has been a blast. Thank you, everyone. Bye.